Staying with us up to this moment on Good Morning Nigeria. And as a prompt for our conversation segment, which is on exodus of health professionals, let's take this background report put together by Ekene Ndulu. Well, as a matter of fact, I've just been informed that we don't have this background already for us to get on with it. But already we have our guests, in the studio, and the one in Canada via Zoom. So let's first of all introduce here in the studio Professor Innocent Uja. Professor Uja is the president of Nigeria Medical Association, NMA. So good to have you this morning in our studio.
Thank you very much.
And also with us here in Abuja studio is Dr. Tajudin Sanusi, Registrar, Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, MDCN. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, and we are glad to inform you that we're also being joined this morning via Zoom from Canada, and I guess there is Dr. Motunrayo Adetola. Dr. Adetola is an associate professor at the Saskatchewan, I hope I got that correctly, and a family medical practitioner right there in Canada. Well, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me.
All right, Dr. Motunrayo Adetola, thank you. Once again, you've been our guest on Good Morning Nigeria previously. I hope you assist our viewers to get the correct pronunciation of where you are an associate professor. When we were much younger, high school, Kieran, you remember when geographical names, when you saw a name like Saskatchewan, it was a nickname for one of our seniors then. We used to call him Saskatchewan. But I believe that it's Saskatchewan. Thank you very much, Dr. Adetola, for being our guest on Good Morning Nigeria today. Professor Innocent Uja, President NMA, I'm delighted to have you one more time on Good Morning Nigeria. We know that this is a tough period for the medical profession. The resident doctors have been on strike for a while. NMA itself has also issued a notice, but our critical concern has to do with the unending exodus of healthcare professionals from Nigeria. A bit of background, I mean, we didn't have this background, and we're all familiar with what happened. I recall, I had some relatives who in the 50s and in the 60s went overseas to study medicine. They specialized, and after their qualification and years of practice abroad, they returned to Nigeria in the 70s. But of course, what we have seen since the catastrophic impact of the structural adjustment program in 1986, followed by the SAP riots that we saw in 1989, Nigerian medical professionals have all been voting with their feet out of the country. This, of course, is a worrisome development. But if it isn't, tell us why it isn't so. Professor Uja.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning all. It's a delight to be here again. The story about the migration of doctors from Nigeria and other health workers is a very worrisome situation. I must say that it didn't just start this today. Didn't start this year. There was what we call internal brain drain in 1978 when the decree on prohibition of private practice, and many doctors, consultants, professors left the hospital, the government hospital, to establish their own hospital. And we lost
within the country.
Yeah, within the country at the time. At that time, it was still okay to practice medicine in Nigeria, but the environment was not good enough for in government establishments. So a lot of our very experienced doctors left. I don't want to mention names, but they were very well concentrated in Lagos. And you know that as part of that, a very first-class hospital was established in Lagos among those who left the University of Lagos and Lagos University Teaching Hospital. This continued until it appeared that things were going to go well. But in the 90s, early 90s, Nigerians left, and they left in droves to Saudi Arabia, to Canada, US, and the United Kingdom. And this was very, very worrisome until the then president, military president of Nigeria, Ibrahim Babangida, who has just marked his 80th birthday, tried to reverse it by the creation of medical salary scale and medical salary super scale. At that time, after a visit to him in Durham Barracks, it was related to him the fact that doctors are leaving because of poor work environment, poor remunerations, poor welfare. And what he told us then was that, and I was the second vice president of NMA, what he told us then was that he didn't know that doctors were so poorly paid and was going to make history, and he did make history. He made history because he created the medical salary scale for doctors in Nigeria. And things started stabilizing. Some improvement in the work environment, facilities probably were improved. Under Oluko Erason Kuti, Professor Oluko Erason Kuti, I think easily described as the best minister of health that we had. With the primary health care development agencies developed, and Nigeria was at it again at the time where immunization, childhood immunization cropped up to about 90%. So you could see the dynamics. Unfortunately, after a while, things were not working well. When President, Babangida, Obasanjo, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo came in, he developed some programs where some selected hospitals were being equipped, therefore the hospitals started picking up again, and work environment was improving. But those equipments did not have what we call the maintenance agreement that could be put to use. Those who supply the equipment were supposed to maintain those equipment. So they did not last quite long, and again we went down. Now, coming to the current situation, unfortunately, doctors and many health workers now have to leave. They're leaving because, one, it's a fundamental human right. That is what we call mobility of labor. They're going for a greener pasture. Let me just wind back a little. In the 90s, a doctor could no longer train his children in school. A doctor. They didn't have money to train their children. That's why many consultants, the very senior ones, left for Saudi Arabia to ensure that they don't have out-of-school children, because they are doctors and they have options. And things improved for them and for the family. But then, as we are now, things are not the best. One, many states cannot even pay the biggest salary we are talking about. Abuja is owing doctors and other health workers for over 60 months. I don't see how a doctor can effectively, where you have to be reading, you have to be, doing some brainstorming on yourself, on issues, how you can manage your patients very well, thinking about your patients, and then how also thinking about yourself. How can you manage? How can you treat a patient very effectively when you have not been paid? Unless you are a rogue, therefore stealing, and we don't think that is correct. It is not right. So Abia, Imo, which others? Anambra, Ondo State. In fact, Ondo State started paying 50% of the meager salary when scattered to their workers. And the situation is not even better because there is not even any comforting statement from particularly Ondo State. He was speaking, he had a program where he was speaking Yoruba, spitting fire on doctors. And obviously the doctors should not and they cannot fight him back. So the best thing is to find a pathway of leaving the country for a greener pasture. Because I don't think any doctor would want to stay and be suffering. First, he will not put in his best. That's number one. Two, what about his children? What about the wife? In fact, some are even they've been divorced. Some wives are divorcing their husbands because they can no longer cope with the household requirements. They don't have the money. So if you look at this, and of course there are options. First of all, I must say that Nigerian doctors are very well trained, and they are very valued and sought after. That's the truth of the matter. And any exams they go to UK and take PLAB, almost all of them will pass at first sitting. Saudi Arabia does not require. In fact, once you say you are trained as a specialist from Nigeria, you don't need any other exam because they are very well trained. Go to Canada, you write the exam, you pass. Go to US, you write the exam, you pass, and you will be given job, and you'll be comfortable. And once you are comfortable, you can put in your best. Apart from the salaries that are being given, that are being paid, the work environment is very conducive. It's very, very conducive. You get all that you want, right? I remember, where was I? I was in Makodi, Benue, 2 days ago, and I'm told that IV fluid is nowhere to be found in Makodi. Makodi houses, Federal Medical Center, Benue State University Teaching Hospital. IV fluid. I don't know whether you understand what this drip that we
intravenous.
Yes. They we are no longer found in Makodi. I don't know of other states or other state capitals.
Is that a supply chain issue? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have not done research into it, but it is not. Nobody should hear that there is no IV fluid anywhere in this country.
Exactly.
Or we have a short supply. So you can say that things are not, and it will appear to me that we are not bothered. It doesn't matter, and our people are suffering. There's no two way about that. You have the best brains living. The environment is hostile. One problem to the other, right from the hospital itself to the Federal Ministry of Health. So, in situations like this, I was the Director General of Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. In situations like this, I would have thought that the Federal Ministry of Health would have put a crack team to study in details and determine the magnitude of the problem. Why are they leaving? Is it just because of money? Because the first thing any Nigerian would talk about is money, and it's not money. Everything is not about money. But you want to be comfortable. You need to have the basic requirements to do your work. Not to talk about insurgency. I mean, if I'm kidnapped today or my relation is kidnapped today, I'll be off. I'll have to leave because you have to survive first. You have to be alive, and this is happening, in large numbers. Doctors. When we were in Benin last week, and when we were coming, we finished our neck meeting, and we're coming back. One of our doctors with his family in his own car, a whole family was kidnapped. A medical doctor, and it was only released yesterday. So you live in fear. Insecurity is a big problem. So you want to go and practice medicine in a place where you can sleep with your 2 eyes closed, where you have facilities that will satisfy, because you know this, you know that this is what you should do, but the enabling environment is not there for you to do anything. So we think that the Federal Ministry of Health particularly, must wake up to its responsibility. I mean, we can no longer continue to pretend.
All right. Professor Oja, we are going to return to you because of the program. You've actually raised a very important and pertinent, points, as to what has led to the current situation in the country, where our best brains in the medical field are leaving the country. I wouldn't know whether Dr. Motunrayo Detola is one of those best brains that we have lost. He practices in Canada. Now we still have a very clear signal with you. Let's get your own take. I'm sure you listened to Professor Oja, lay out a number of reasons that may have led to the current situation we find ourselves presently in Nigeria. Let's get your own view, and again, why persons like you, who is a professor of medicine, has also left the country. Do you have any other reason, apart from the the ones put out by Professor Uja as to what has led to exodus of medical personnel in this country to other parts of the world?
I fully agree with Professor Oja. I left Nigeria in 1995. I was doing my postgraduate training at UCH Ibadan. And it seems odd to me that we keep dealing with the same problem decade after decade. Just like he said, this is not a new thing. It's been going on for a long time. In fact, Nigerian health professionals have been going to Saudi Arabia or other foreign countries for quite a long time. It's just that we're seeing these changes now in massive numbers. Before, the people who are going seem to be limited to the tertiary institutions, but now they're going from everywhere. And it's not just doctors, it's nurses, it's pharmacists, it's physiotherapists. And it's not just about money. It's insecurity, like you said. It's also the conditions of work. If you go to a hospital to work and all the things you need, I mean, if we're struggling, like you said just now, with having drips in the hospital, and they are not there, what do you work with as a doctor? The job satisfaction is just not there. I was in Nigeria last year to volunteer in a hospital somewhere in Abuja. No, I'm not talking of outside Abuja, in Abuja, the federal capital. And I was shocked with the state of a government hospital that I saw. Basic things just weren't there. This is a state hospital. There was no general anesthesia, and we were there to operate on patients, and we were there for a whole week. And so it's not satisfying. So some of the things that the doctors will see, immediately they get out. And I'm talking even in Africa, Europe, wherever, is job satisfaction. Your salary is paid in time, and good salaries too. And nobody's going to harass you. You can give a good life to your family back at home and your immediate family. These are things that we're looking for. And nobody ever said healthcare anywhere is cheap. It's always expensive. But it's time that our government takes this thing serious. It's been going on for a long time, and the people are suffering unnecessarily. Government needs to get its act together. The political will has to be there, and the healthcare has to be seen not as an expense, but as an investment for the growth of the country and for the care of its people. This is the time that we need to start taking these things very seriously. You know, a situation where we have less than 220 million people we have in Nigeria, and we only have about 40,000 doctors. That's not even up to what we have in Canada. Population of Canada is about 35 million, and we have 70,000 doctors working here. Doesn't make sense that we keep doing things like this and we keep losing our best. Time to change something there.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adetola. We'll come back to you presently. Dr. Tajudin Sanusi, Registrar, Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. What is the situation with the exodus of medical and dental professionals from our country? What numbers do you have?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this program. I deal with facts and figures. In year 2020, by our record, we issued about 950 letters of good standing. Letters of good standing. If I say good standing, if you are moving from one jurisdiction to the other jurisdiction, you have to be sure that you are in a good standing from your primary place where you are coming from. So by last year we issued about 950. That does not mean that all of them are outside the country. There are some that actually applied.
Okay, Dr. Sanusi, we understand that there are issues with your microphone, and so our engineers will sort that out shortly. We'll sort it out shortly, but we'll come back. Just keep the numbers, starting off with, of course, with the issue of good standing. Dr. Motunrayo Adetola, let's return to you. Let's return to you in Canada. And again, of course, we must appreciate the fact that you are with us in the very early hours of your time zone. When you discuss with your colleagues, I mean, you've been out now for well over 2 decades. When you discuss with your colleagues, and as you said, there's the frustration of having to regurgitate same old stories, same old issues. What do you find as the key issue in seeking to tackle those same issues and those same old challenges?
The recurring thing that as people, you know very well that I used to be the president of the Canadian Association of Nigerian Physicians. And so when people arrive, at least here in Canada, a lot of people get my details and contact me. And the same reason is Nigeria is frustrating. There is insecurity. I've been a doctor for 5 years. I've been a doctor for 10 years, and I'm unable to cater for my family. I don't feel like my life is going anywhere. So job satisfaction is number one. Whether it's the income or the fact that they feel that they are at a standstill in terms of professional realization. So this is the same thing. It's a recurrent thing, over and over and over again. You know, so you enter your medical school to study for 6 years. You are lucky if you finish in 8 or 9 years, and when you're done, you are supposed to do your housemanship. It takes you 2 years, 3 years to get a housemanship, and then you have to go for your national service, and then you want to enter into your residency, and the same rigmarole is played over and over again to get a spot, to go in and do your 4 to 6 years of to become a specialist. It's difficult, and you could spend half of your life trying to become a specialist, and then at the end of the day, you still get a situation where, like Dr. Uja just told us, then you're working, the salary is poor, and you're still not being paid. And people are still telling you, are you the only ones here? Why do you think, why do you think a doctor is special? I mean, what is a man supposed to do if you're doing all of these things and you still feel like you're not being appreciated and you're not being paid, and yet you're supposed to work?
Dr. Adetola, we are still with you but at this moment. There are also other issues raised, by Nigerians and even government with respect to the practice of medicine in Nigeria. Nigerian medical doctors, some of them do not just work for government, they also have their own private hospitals. And when it's time for making referrals, they make references to those hospitals where they are working. These are privately owned hospitals. So there's also this accusation that some Nigerian doctors do not even pay the right attention they should pay to government-owned hospitals, because they have their own private hospitals or are aligned to private hospitals. For instance, if a patient is supposed to buy a drug, the doctor will refer you to a pharmacist where he has a share. Right, when you go and buy there, whatever you buy there has its own share of, from what you bought. Is that claim, have you heard anything about that? Do you believe that there is also part of the problems that Nigeria has with respect to medical practice in the country?
Absolutely. You know what, we are always going to be a mirror of our society, and that is why my brother, Dr. Sanusi, is there. That becomes an issue of professionalism and the work of the regulatory body to make sure that the people are not bearing the brunt of the doctor's greed. Human beings always have their vices, okay? But we also have to remember, and I'm not going to make any excuses for any doctor or any health professional, to gouge patients who are already vulnerable. So it happens, and I know it happens in our country, unfortunately, but the doctors or the healthcare professional is no different from the policeman, by the roadside, or any other professional or teachers who are, eking out illegalities from people that they're supposed to be serving. But that is why we have regulatory bodies that Dr. Sanusi is heading, to hear those complaints and deal appropriately with those kind of situations. They shouldn't be happening. And if they are happening, people who are, doing those kind of things should be brought before the law, whether it's the police or the regulatory authorities like the medical council to deal with. This shouldn't be happening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adetola. I mean, that's one key issue that, of course, we would like to drill into. But we're going to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations, we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all. To look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Firstly, safety. I will ensure that my family members and loved ones are safe.
I will try as much as possible not to get involved.
We should call the nearest police station.
I will alert my family, my friends, my neighbors in that vicinity that this is what is happening.
Who wins the star prize of 1 million naira in the ongoing Peace Nigeria Challenge, powered by Ask Nigeria in partnership with National Council for Arts and Culture, NTAC, Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, and Star Times. Unity Challenge Nigeria, stronger together.
The federal government has commenced second phase of COVID-19 vaccination. If you are 18 years and above and unvaccinated, register at www.nphcda.vaccination.gov.ng. Visit the nearest vaccination site to receive COVID-19 vaccine. If you received first dose of AstraZeneca vaccine before 8th July 2021, second dose commences 23rd August and closes 5th September 2021. All vaccines are free and certified safe by WHO and NAFDAC. At the vaccination site, you can check blood pressure and know your diabetes risk status. Children aged 0 to 23 months will receive childhood vaccines and screen for malnutrition. After vaccination, continue to adhere to COVID-19 prevention protocols. For more information, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng or call 0700-220-1122. This message is from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
All right, you're welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, we're back again to Dr. Tajudin Sanusi, who is the Registrar of the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. Dr. Sanusi, we apologize for that glitch when you were just trying to take off with regard to the numbers. You were saying earlier that you had issued in 2020 alone 950 letters of good standing to your professionals. So continue from where you start.
Well, that is how we track people going out of the country. Out of these 950 that are applied for letters of good standing, some of them are here, some are already there, hanging over a period of time, because it is a global requirement, in the sense that if you are struck off from the relevant register here, you can't go to another jurisdiction because they want to know what has happened. And they don't want a situation whereby somebody who is already sanctioned is coming to their own jurisdiction and thereby polluting their own system. So that is the only way we track doctors leaving this country.
What I mean, apart from the numbers, what have you found as the push and pull factors in the immigration of medical doctors?
Well, my president is here, Professor Udaminai. He had said it all. Part of poor remuneration is part of it. And the fact, another fact is, let's say the truth, most states are not investing in health. Most states are not investing in health. It's like federal government is getting overwhelmed, because when you look at the statistics of the doctors employed in this country today, 60 to 70% of them are employed by the federal government. I must confess to you, we have that record. Common salary approved. States are reluctant in actually implementing the common salary, and that's why there's that drift from the state government to the federal government establishment. Of course, universities are coming up, and almost all Nigerian universities now want to have medical program, and this is where they get the pool of lecturers. That's why the whole thing seems to be that almost 60 to 70% of doctors in Nigeria are working with the federal government, and it's like the states are not bothered. Of course, there are some states that are very exceptional. I don't need to mention their name, but where I can mention, Rivers State is there, Lagos State is there. So some of these things, I think the problems are mainly from the states, and it's most unfortunate. And let's go again. Constitutionally, there are 774 local governments in Nigeria, and each of these local governments is supposed to have medical officer of health. They don't even employ them. Where they are employed, as a medical officer of health, your job is not to sit down in the office, to move around, because we have some of these CHOs, they work on standing orders, and the MOH moves around. They will say there's no money to fund his movement. So all those problems are there, and it's most unfortunate, because we know that quite a lot of our people are in the rural settings, and nothing is being done. Coming back to those who are working in the tertiary health institutions, the job satisfaction is not there. Like the president said, IV fluid. These are things that can even be compounded within the hospital setting itself. And that's why when we go on accreditation for the medical schools, when we get to pharmacy, we ask them, what do you compound here? You don't need to depend on purchase from vendors most of the time. You are pharmacists. You are trained to compound drugs and dispense. But simple drugs, IV fluid, methylsalicylate, sanitizer, mist expectorant, MMT, these are things that are commonly needed and being used. They are not being compounded. But of course, we continue to advise them, and we will make it some of the requirements that we need to compound some of these small drugs, and that will even reduce the so-called overhead cost on the part of the.
Why are these drugs not being compounded?
They are the one that can say that. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not a pharmacist, and they are not under my control. But we try to encourage them to actually compound some of these drugs.
You see, that boils down to the question I put to our guest in Canada, and that concerns the issue of practice in this country. Honestly speaking, many doctors in Nigeria who work in a federal or state establishments, they all have private clinics. Let's just be very clear about that. They all have private clinics, and if you have to now serve two masters, one will suffer. No doubt about that. Even when it comes to the issue of tools and necessary, perhaps, medicines we're talking about in hospitals, some doctors are also responsible for procurement of some of these drugs in the hospitals. And one cannot say really that they don't have there's no availability of funds for that. But if that fund is made available, does he really purchase those drugs for the hospital or for his own private hospital? Right. We're Nigerians, so we know ourselves. In many streets across Nigeria, there are clinics all over the place. And if you go there, the medical doctor practicing in that clinic is working either in a federal or state-owned medical facility, yet he has a clinic. So when is the time for him to now go to his private setting and also do a full-time job in a government-owned facility? So that's also part of the insinuations from many Nigerians concerning the practice of some medical doctors in this country.
Kyria, I know that
Professor
your question is to Professor Uja. Professor Uja, please take this along with it, because you were giving a historical background earlier.
Yes.
When in the in the late 1970s, the government prohibited private practice by medical doctors. It was the Babangida administration. Earlier, you were extolling the good deeds that he had.
Yeah,
that restored,
clearly, yes.
That restored
some
the
dignity.
privilege of private practice to physicians and law lecturers and so on.
Very
and so
good. Not just physicians, but law lecturers too.
But the key issue now is the abuse of that privilege of private practice, that the official work for which they are hired suffers, while in the meantime they seek, to benefit from the private practice that they have, either the clinics that they own or they are recruited.
They co-own.
You co-own or the Kyrian. Sometimes the consultants, if you're a consultant, you engage.
Is it evidence-based or you are just making an impression?
No.
You see, we are scientists.
It's an open question.
No. You see, the truth of the matter is that a toad does not jump in the afternoon for nothing. If doctors and other health workers are very well remunerated, they don't have any reason to go. A doctor can also own a bar. You know that? He has to be comfortable. I'm not saying, you see, the law says that you can practice medicine outside the working hours. Though there's nothing wrong in a doctor owning a clinic, but he must not be there during working hours. After that, you can decide what you want to do. Either you play chess, you watch TV, or you go to the clinic and see patients. Because, in fact, they even help in ensuring that many Nigerians are treated properly. Because if you go, I don't know whether you have ever gone to a general hospital or a specialty hospital or federal government hospital. Some patients come in the morning at 6 o'clock. They leave at 6 p.m. That is not it. Because the disease, the poverty, one of the greatest diseases is poverty. Poverty of knowledge and financial poverty. And that is the problem we face in Nigeria. So the reality is that, one, a doctor is allowed to practice, just like a lawyer, to practice outside of the working hours. There is nothing abnormal about that. It's provided for in the law. Secondly, let me just quickly say that a doctor does not procure drugs or medicaments. It's the work of the procurement unit with the pharmacy. So it has nothing to do with the doctors. And the issue of compounding drugs and rest, you can't blame it wholly on pharmacists. Because if there is no budget for it, where would they do? Would they use their money? There must be budget to do this, and they should be trained. You see, medical profession, healthcare profession must involve capacity development on a regular basis. Ask how many nurses, how many doctors, how many pharmacists have been trained on a regular basis. You must continue to train. Because it requires that you must update your knowledge, you must update your skills. And I think that we need to be fair to those who are. I was in the UK in the 1980s, sorry. But I came back, they told me when I was coming, precisely 1987, I was very comfortable there, but I decided to come back to Nigeria. Some Nigerians were saying, what are you going home to do? I said, I'm going to serve my people. And I'm in Nigeria. I have no regrets being here. But the truth was that in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, there were consultants that were going out. Today, a house officer will finish today, he's going. A house officer will finish his house job today, he's off. And once he passes the plab, he can do his residency there, he can stay there. Here in Nigeria, everybody wants to be paid specialist allowance, even when you are not doing anything. Because a resident, to train as a resident, you heard what my friend in Canada said.
Yes, at the time.
You have to spend 8-9 years. It's not by wish. You must finish it. Nobody would. You have to do it. It's a must. And then you come back, and somebody who probably is spending 2-3 weeks in a year for update course. Tomorrow they say he's a consultant, either pharmacist or medical laboratory scientist. The truth of the matter is that the system has collapsed. I'm being very serious. I've been here, I've been a doctor for over 40 years. And we have seen the progressive decline in values. The only thing we know in Nigeria, the value we have, which is thoroughly misplaced, is money. Productivity must be there. We must be productive. right? We must invest in health. In fact, right now, one of the things we are putting together in the Nigerian Medical Association is to present a proposal to Nigerian government so that we can establish a health bank. Because there's Bank of Industry, there's Bank of Agriculture. You must invest in health. It's not government alone will not be able to cater for the health. And when we are saying government, every time we say government, everybody is looking at federal government. What about state government? And in fact, what the Registrar of Council said is correct. Even when you are in the state, your salary is less than that of the federal. Me, I'm practicing the same thing with you. And then when I come back, your take-home package is less than my own. You move to where it is better. That's the law of nature, gravitation. So, and the state governments are totally unconcerned. Can you imagine a doctor or health worker working for 17 months without salary? What do you want him to do? You say he's going to the clinic and he has to, it's better than doing armed robbery.
Well, yeah.
You get my point. It's better than doing armed robbery. So
let's pause you in the meantime, because there are a number of issues that I calculated in what you have articulated. But there's one. Let's just take it and then dispense with it and then move on to others. I want to bring in back the Registrar of Council. This just relates to attitude to work. Attitude to work. And that was the question framed by my colleague, Kiriam, that we appear now to have an abuse of the privilege or the right to private practice, that you cannot serve two masters effectively. Let's face it, we know that there are instances where the doctors in government hospital will refer you to their private clinics or to clinics in which they have interest. And some of them who are consultants hire the younger doctors to help them run those clinics. They get the additional remuneration from there. They don't compute that as part of what they earn. But it turns out that there is the allegation that because they pay scant attention to their primary duties, then we are having the major challenges that we are also having around, about which everybody is complaining, including the medical professionals.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. On the issue of private practice, I think that has been taken care of by the constitutional amendment that now prohibit private practice. The only private practice allowed in this country now is farming. Based on that, that is why the Code of Medical Ethics is undergoing revision, because in this situation like this, the Constitution is supreme. But let us go back to the issue.
No, can you please explain that further? You're saying, I mean, when was the Constitution amended to? It has always been a provision there that a public servant can engage in agriculture,
No,
XYZ.
No, in fact, you can find out from the Office of Attorney General. We have a document in our office that says private practice is abolished. The only private practice allowed in this country now is farming. That one, I don't need to dwell on that. Be that as it may, even when it was allowed in our code, you can only engage in private practice at your own spare time. But with the scenario now, a particular state owing doctors 17, 18 months salary, do you want the doctors to take to armed robbery? They will have to find a way. And the thing they know how to do best is this practice. That's one aspect. The second aspect is this. As a regulator, if there is no complaint, I'm sorry, I've not had anything, because I cannot be a judge in my cause. There must be a complaint. And that's why most of the time, we try to educate the masses. If you feel something is wrong somewhere, when you go to any hospital and you are attended to by a doctor, then if you feel something is wrong, you have the right to complain. At the moment, we have over 120 complaints pending investigation before the investigative panel of council, and over 70 pending before the disciplinary tribunal for trials. You could recall that the tribunal that met the last but one, a whole professor of surgery's name was struck off from relevant register to tell you, when it comes to professional discipline, we are very, very active. But when they don't complain, we can't just go there and say, no, you are doing this. And like the president said, this thing must be evidence-based. It's not hearsay. So those are some of the things for those of us who are in charge of the practice, the conduct of our registered practitioners. In fact, we expect that when you go to any doctor, if you don't ask for his current license, he should be, in fact, he should even hang a copy of his license in his consulting room to ensure that you are now dealing with doctors. Because there are so many quacks, charlatans there, masquerading as doctors. So some of the things, of course, in a society like this, no matter what, I don't think our own is the worst. But we don't want the thing to go bad. That's why we continue to talk and ensure that we maintain that minimum standard expected in terms of practice.
Okay, let's get something clear here, because from what you have said, you said that the only private practice allowed now is farming. But Professor Joe had said earlier on that there is a provision that allows medical personnel to have, private practice. And our concern, in this connection has been how much of attention does the medical personnel pay to the official work and then his private practice. All right, let's return to Canada once more and get Professor Adesola to come in here. Let us know what is obtainable in Canada with respect to regulation as well as private practice, which of course you have had our other guests here, discuss. Medical personnel allowed to engage in private practice over there? If yes, in what format? Does that happen? And in terms of regulation, if one does not complain, is there any mechanism, by which regulating authorities in Canada fish out some of those medical personnel who are not carrying out their responsibility in the best, in the best form?
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, okay. The issue about private practice and the way doctors are remunerated, it's a bit different. Actually, not a bit. It's very, very different here compared to Nigeria. Most doctors here, I would say about 95% of doctors in Canada are not paid salaries. We are actually paid through a private type of care. Doctors in Canada are independent contractors. So we actually we all have, when I say all, I mean the 95% I'm talking about. We essentially run a private practice kind of style, and then we see the patient and we bill the services to the government. So that's the way it works. So maybe it's something that Nigeria can also look at. That way it's an incentive. And then the government already has determined what the consultation cost, what a procedure cost, that kind of thing. But then that's because we have an insurance in place, which Nigeria doesn't have. Now, only about 3 to 4% of Nigerians are insured, which is a sad thing. 61 years after independence, and we still don't have a national health insurance. I mean, we have, but I'm just saying that not with 3%. We should be having everybody in Nigeria insured. So this is the way we are remunerated here. It's not salary. That way, it's difficult for you to be in two places at any one time. So if doctors, and we have a scarcity of them in Nigeria now, they won't prefer to work in a private care setting, maybe we can walk along that system and follow the Canadian type. And I think that's a similar system that they have in the United Kingdom and Australia and most of these developed places. So that way, you see 10 patients, you are paid for 10 patients. You see 20 patients, you are paid for 20 patients. And if you decide not to see any patients, you are not paid anything. That way, nobody's cheated. And then when it comes to regulation, we do not have a central regulatory body, the kind that Nigeria has. My Oga, Dr. Sanusi, is the registrar of the Nigerian Medical and Dental Council. But here in Canada, for instance, and in the United States, every province, which is the same as state, has its own regulatory authority. I practice in a province or state where a Nigerian actually is the president of a regulatory authority for the practice of medicine and surgery at this point in time. And therefore, it just makes the task a bit less onerous on a national body to do the task of monitoring. And just like Dr. Sanusi said, the cases have to be reported either by the patient or by a colleague or by the institution, the hospital where the doctor is working. If they've noticed that something or a practice that the way the doctor is engaging in his or her practice is dangerous to the community or to the society, a report is made. And but every now and then too, sometimes the college they do follow certain procedures to see if certain things are being done right or wrongly. For instance, if a doctor is doing surgeries in his clinic, they can do spot inspections every now and then to just be sure that certain things are in place and those strict guidelines are being adhered to by those who are doing it. And if they're not doing it right, they can lose those privileges to do surgeries and, in short, close down those clinics, even when the doctors are qualified doctors to do them. So that's the way it works out. So you asked me two questions and on access. So the issue is access and remuneration, and also on the regulation. That's the way it works. It works here.
Dr. Adetola, I still want to stay with you so that we can have additional information with regard to the practice. In a sense, you have partly explained it. Now, you say you are an independent contractor. That's a legal expression. That means that you are self-employed. An independent contractor, you are self-employed. Even though there's some other genre that is developing now, they call them dependent contractors. But as an independent contractor, if you see 10 patients in a day, it is not as if you are in an assembly line. That's to say, you just see them rapidly. There is a check to be sure that indeed those 10 patients that you have seen in a day, there was due diligence in seeing them. In other words, you went through the right protocols, which is where, if there is an infraction, you get sanctioned by the regulatory body in the province where you are located. Is that correct?
That is true. But also remember, not only can I be reported to the college, I can also be sued by the patients for doing something wrong to them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that explanation. The other issue that you raised earlier, let me quote you again. You say that expenditure on health should not be seen as an expense as such, but rather as an investment, which leads us to the whole idea of financing healthcare in Nigeria. If it's an investment, is it an investment solely by the government? The government, of course, has an interest in you being healthy and alive. But you as an individual, also, you have a responsibility to yourself to be healthy and alive. A good number of times when we are discussing the good pay that healthcare professionals receive outside of Nigeria, we don't seem to worry about the mechanics for the funding and financing of healthcare in those jurisdictions. I'm sure, if we had enough time, for you to break it down, you will find that there are business managers throughout that chain. There are accountants, there are persons who are keeping track, there are actuaries, that's to say persons in insurance, so that you know how much is likely to come into the pool, how much is likely to leave the pool. What is it that we need to do? I know that, in a sense, our healthcare insurance system was a mess some years ago. The new HEMSMAT has been seeking to put things together. But when you go to seek, healthcare on the basis of health insurance, sometimes, as some persons have said, you get treated shabbily. How do we get out of this?
I was privileged to listen to one of our previous health ministers, who happens to be an health economist, Professor Itayo Lambo, I think his name was. He was minister during the second term of President Obasanjo, when he spoke at the NMA conference in Abuja, 2018. And he's a very brilliant man. He said the out-of-pocket expenses of Nigerians when it comes to healthcare is about 70%. The only problem is this: it still comes down to the government, because it's people who are paying this. But the government still has the duty to help put a framework in place so that appropriate regulation and evening out the landscape for whether it's the government that is operating or the private care, as well as the national insurance health scheme, to function appropriately in a way that people are not being gouged, the funding, right way so that we can grow, our healthcare infrastructure and resources in a right manner. This is what we have not been doing rightly, and it's time we get this act on the road. That's what all these other countries, whether it's Canada, UK, Australia, Americans, have done, and they have done very, very well. And we cannot rediscover the wheel. They are doing it well. We just need to copy what they are doing. Even Rwanda, Ghana, Senegal, they are doing it. They are doing a better job than we are doing now. We're the so-called giants of Africa.
Well, as a matter of fact, Rwanda has really gone far, you know, I mean, in the, not only in the health sector, but other sectors of their national life. We won't have time to go into that now. I would like to thank you and appreciate you really, you know, for all these noble contributions that you have made so far in the course of the program. We're still continuing, but let's take a short break. When we come back, the conversation will actually continue right from our studios here. All right, you're welcome back. Professor Jai, I wanted to clear some issue here that has to do with the position of the medical personnel in Nigeria. We have Accountant General, and we have in other jurisdictions, is it Surgeon General? Or, exactly. This issue has been argued in the past, right? And the doctors are saying they are not well represented in terms of that. But again, we've had ministers, you know, of health who are medical personnel. So would that be need for us to have Surgeon General? I'm asking this question because could it be that if we have a Surgeon General, that the structuring of the medical practice in terms of remuneration and other issues you have raised here that are concerns, you know, would have been properly taken care of? Do we need to do that? And you also mentioned, you know, while we're off air, really, you know, that doctors are attacked by Nigerians, not just people in government, but also ordinary Nigerians. May we know the reason why doctors are attacked, as you said when we were having a conversation outside off air?
Well, let me just probably start with the second one. The unfortunate thing is that, and I had said it before, that is this a sin to be a doctor? It will appear in Nigeria, because doctors are valued everywhere. In fact, where I was reading, you know, what was it that said that doctors are next to God? It's not because they are God, but because their calling calls for that. They must ensure that any patient who puts his life or her life before you, you must be able, you must do the best you can to ensure that this life is preserved. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, there are so many things that are happening that will appear that there shouldn't be doctors anymore. Even some other health professionals had the temerity of saying that we should not put DR after our name. It's not a country that appears to be lawless that anybody like that will say that. In the Bible, there are three noble professions: the clergy, the law, and medicine. So medicine does not start today.
There's no politics in that.
No.
You didn't mention politics amongst those three.
No, because it is not noble. Anybody can, and it's not a profession. You see, politics is a hobby. It's not a profession because anybody can go to politics, but everybody cannot come to be doctors. The unfortunate thing is that even many of the attacks we have are people who are struggling for their children to read medicine. And of course, they probably had started to read medicine and they couldn't, because many are called, but few are chosen. You start maybe with 100 people, you will be surprised. And nobody can do that. The politics they brought into the National Assembly, I mean into the Medical and Dental Council for foreign graduates, was a very misplaced politics. Medicine is not about politics. If you are not properly trained, you see, in the medical school, once you finish your exam today, as you finish maybe 12 noon, by 5 p.m. you get your results. Yes. It doesn't happen in any other discipline in this country, in any university, because it's regulated. And you must do it. It's not an issue of say, you sell a handout or you backhand. No, You just finish, you don't know who is going to examine you, so nobody can victimize you. You don't know which patient you are going to see. So it is thoroughly regulated. That's the truth of the matter. I'm not saying it's 100%, but the training is such that nobody. But you find that you come out, we have one of the things that had unfortunately been a factor for this strike was suddenly head of service, office of head of service say house officers are no longer on scheme of service. Housemanship is part and parcel of medical practice. It didn't start in Nigeria. It started long time with the Hippocrates. So why suddenly is it that the office of head of service has no other job to do than to create this problem? And I think that they are creating a problem for the government. Suddenly, there's circular that commerce, if you are a doctor, you are lecturing in the university, you should no longer be on commerce. How has that affected the pay or the remuneration, the salary structure? Suddenly, a doctor with a fellowship, when we say fellowship, it's not about coming to give you fellow of one thing or the other in the classroom, in a hotel. It's not. Then a university will say a doctor with fellow cannot, unless a PhD that they buy from the road, that you cannot be a vice chancellor. You are a professor, but you cannot be a vice chancellor. I took the University of Jos to court in 2011. I was the DG of NIMA. How can you say that as a doctor, as a professor, you cannot be vice chancellor because you don't have a PhD? Our calling is not PhD. You can have a PhD and never touch any patient as a doctor. You will not be allowed. So we have professional and academic program for the National Program Medical College and West Spectrum Program Medical College. It's not about fellowship given in a hotel. So suddenly, and we fought that of the University of Lagos. Lagos State University.
Before time, the issue of having
Surgeon
General.
The issue of Surgeon General, of course, is very relevant. We've talked about that, but politics will not allow it. Did you hear the Secretary of State for Health in the US? It's not Dr. Fauci. That was talking about everything about COVID. That is the Surgeon General of the United Kingdom, of the United States. They are in charge. It doesn't have political, because the minister is a politician. And when you have that, there is no need. It doesn't necessarily mean that a doctor must be the Minister of Health. But this one, just like you have a Accountant General, you have a Surgeon General who oversees the practice, the practice of medicine, the conduct of medicine, the supply, everything. Is not affected by any politics. But in Nigeria, when we talk about that, they say, no, it cannot happen. And you can see how chaotic our health system is.
Exactly. That's the point. We're talking about the management of our healthcare system.
Yes.
Management, and you look at it from the broad spectrum. Yes. That management will incorporate the financing of the funding, the economics of it, the accounting, supply chain,
training.
Who takes these decisions? First of all, back again to Dr. Tajudin Sanusi. Very briefly, because sometimes in those days, we used to hear of State Health Management Board. I don't know whether they still have them. State Health Management Board, you see the ambulances, they are carrying all over the place and so on. But how is our healthcare system being managed? Is it a question of saying, no, we leave it to political decision makers, or we leave it to the bureaucrats, or to the technocrats, or there's an efficient system that you say, look, at the national level, this is what happens. At the subnational level, this is what happens. Are there things that we can get right at these levels? So that part of the reason for all of this conversation is to find ways of diminishing the brain drain that the country is having in the health sector.
Well, thank you very much. One of the major problems is interference in the technocratic activities. I have part of my training in the UK. Politicians play their politics and they allow the system to run. And I believe we can do that same. We can do same here. You see, you have the permanent secretaries who are in charge of the ministries. They should do their work why those on top should do their own political juggling or whatever you call it. Let's come back to the funding or to this chaotic system we have. If we are blaming the government alone, we are being unfair. We are part of the problems.
Who are the we though?
Nigerians.
You and I.
You and I. I'll give you an instance. When I was in Lagos, I was trying to educate some people on the need, on the need to actually contribute to this national health insurance scheme, 1,000 naira every month. When the person was to respond, he said, for the past 2 years, I've not been to any hospital.
I'm not sick.
I'm not sick. Why would I be paying? On a more serious note, like we have education tax, if it is mandatory that as you are paying tax, you have to pay something what you call health tax. It goes to a dedicated account which we manage by people with integrity that can actually help the system. In Lagos, we know people who say they are poor, but these are the people on weekly basis. They buy this ashwebi for parties just to contribute 1,000 naira every month. They say, when last did I go to the hospital? That's why I said, if we are blaming the government, we are not being fair. We ourselves, we have that problem. And the way the whole thing is now, I think, like I said offline, we all need ethical rebirth in this country. We need to reorientate ourselves and value our system and have a good system rather than worshiping money. Like you said, it is a sin to be poor in this country. It's very unfortunate. In the advanced countries, the poor people, they have a way of taking care of them.
Yes, social security.
Yes. By the time you end up in the hospital and you are unable to pay, the local government, there's a local county, they take care. But because we are so fraudulent, people will go and manipulate and say, I've seen 20 people. Meanwhile, maybe only 2 people. That's why I said there is a total need for overhauling of the system.
Okay, all right. Time is not on our side presently. Let's return to Dr. Adetola for your final comment. How do we as a nation restructure or revamp or reorientate the Nigeria's medical sector? Just in a nutshell.
Political will, political will, political will. I know, I understand, that people need to change their habits. People need to, but the thing is this. For instance, earlier on, I was saying something about national health care. Healthcare is expensive. God forbid that anybody should have a stroke, a cancer, and you have to go to the hospital. These things are very expensive. One individual or a family shouldn't have to be paying for it. And this is the reason until we get the health insurance thing right, we're still wasting our time. And the biggest problem with with the experiment we've been doing in Nigeria is the decree or the law that set this thing up allowed for states to opt out. That thing needs to be better written so that there is no option to opt out. And that way, like Dr. Sanusi was saying, even the poor people can pay their 1,000, the richer people can pay whatever else they need to pay. The government can kick in 10% for those who are working for them, and the individuals can kick in their 5%, so that we have this big reserve, so that we can build better facilities. We can pay for the services, and we can improve on the facilities. And that way also, those of us in diaspora can also come in and help. We have already worked on that, although the federal government, through contributions into the dustbin, even though they worked with us on it, we did it at their behest. So what can we do? It still comes down to the government, because the government has to lead. I know we can put our blames on every individual Nigerian, but individual Nigerians cannot do this alone unless the government leads the way. That's why we have elected leaders in the central government, at the state government, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they are the leaders and they must lead this charge. And then this idea that a doctor has to be the leader, you know, in the health ministry. The engineer must be the minister of works. I think we're in 2021.
All right.
This idea must come to an end.
All right, Dr. Motunraya Adetola, we'd like to pause you there and also thank you for finding time to make your contributions to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria here in Abuja studios. Thank you for really staying late. I don't know what the time is over there, but then I know that you must have sacrificed your time to be part of this show this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Tajudin Sanusi, Registrar Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, we also like to appreciate you for being part of our show this morning. And as well as Professor Innocent Uja, President, Nigerian Medical Association, NMA. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. He came and saw and certainly conquered through his high life music that spanned over 6 decades. With his guitar, piano, and flute, enthusiasts around the world swayed to his melodious tunes, bringing him critical acclaim, with many christening him as Guitar Boy. A brilliant achiever and inspirator of note, he bagged his bachelor's degree at the age of 54 and then capped it with a doctorate degree at the age of 77. In this report, our correspondent Ngozi Chude relives the life and times of music maestro Sir Victor Uwaifo. Now, she met him a few years ago in Benin City, the Edo State capital.
Benin City, a town renowned for its historical bronze casting and a melting pot of tradition, culture, and music. One definitive sound here is highlife, and an individual in this town propelled decades of relevance through his music. The multi-talented and musical genius used his creative ability and craftsmanship to capture his audience across Africa and beyond. He is Sir Victor Uwaifo. He was a force to be reckoned with. His undiluted voice, energetic performances, and proficiency on multiple musical instruments, especially the guitar, combined to make him a legend in Nigeria's musical history and indeed the global podium. The appeal of this colossal musician was, among many things, his guitar and vibrancy, which became a trademark.
I just love music and the guitar, most especially, and it's like you cannot separate both of us. You know, it's like art, it's life. Life is art.
Born 1st March 1941 in Benin City, Edo State, Sir Victor Uwaifo's earliest music influences were his father's gramophone and the GV records. In 1960, he recorded many songs. However, the big break was in 1965 with the song Joromi, originally sung as a folklore based on the story of a hero in Benin Kingdom.
I did it before, but I gave it a different name. It was too advanced, so I brought it down, you know, to the level of other people who listen to music, good music too.
In quick succession, Guitar Boy swept through the country, which narrates his life encounter with a mermaid at the Lagos Bar Beach.
She felt I was going to run away, and that was it. Guitar Boy. That experience of Friday, I say, that was what I transposed into guitar. Nobody had ever strummed the guitar or twanged the guitar or pulled the string that way before. So I did.
By then, his band and music had already been exported to major African countries and Europe, with varying musical genres to his credit.
Highlife is just one of them. You heard of a Kasa music, Sasakosa, Akwete, Mutaba, Titibiti. So these are different bands of music. Highlife is just one of them.
In whatever form, Sir Victor Ibaifo maintained a style, inspiring many younger artists, including Waje, Two-Face, Ice Prince, and others. He was an achiever, with scores of singles and more than 100 records to his credit, with 6 gold and 4 silver awards. Indeed, he conquered through seasons and time, not just in music, but as a philosopher, sculptor, and inventor. He was reputed to be the most educated performing music legend, with a first-class BA honors, master's and PhD degrees in architectural sculpture at the University of Benin, with the earliest educational journey from St. Gregory's College and Yaba College of Technology, Lagos. Sir Victor Ibaifo played along greats like Bobby Benson, Victor Olaiya, Stephen Osadebe, E.C. Arinze, and many others, earning him dignified recognition across board with international and national awards to his credit. The lights dimmed for the Highlife Maestro on Saturday, 20th August 2021 at the age of 80. For many, it is indeed a great loss, but with solace of an enduring legacy that will remain indelible for a long time to come.
Yeah, all right. That was a lovely one. Thank you very much. Except that at the beginning, in your report, you said Benin is a town. Benin is a city.
I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that Benin is a town. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong in that. Because you are quite right. You were there live with your wife, so you know better.
All right. So that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today and indeed for the week. We appreciate your being with us. Back on Monday, same time, 7 in the morning. Take care of yourself. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umar. Do have a great weekend.